Folks, in the United States, over the last 12 months or so, we have decided to deplete our Strategic Petroleum Reserve, often called SPR. We will eventually fill it back up, eventually. But did you know that China is stockpiling oil right now? Taylor's put out a lot of great daily content, and he covered this, and I was like, oh my God, what is going on? So, Taylor, catch us up.
Yeah. I think that there's two realities here, or two explanations as to what could be playing out. One is, very logical, straightforward, and the other one is much more troublesome to look at. But the reality is, what you've had all year in 2023 is China importing massive amounts of oil above what they historically have. So they don't publish data as to how much oil is going into their reserves, but estimates are somewhere around the tune of 2 million barrels a day. So they're refilling at 2 million barrels a day. Just know that that's a big number.
That's a big
So the
number.
first
Yeah.
explanation that's like, okay, this is just kind of like logical, is buying cheap oil from Russia and Iran, right? So we have sanctioned, Western nations have sanctioned Russia for invading Ukraine and
Yep.
have long sanctioned Iran for having nuclear weapons. And so, therefore, we aren't willing to buy, at least to any heavy extent, oil from them. And therefore, Russia and Iran are just going, hey, we'll discount because we have to offload this. And China's like, hey,
I'll take
we're
it.
over here. We'll buy cheap oil. We're good. And so they're just looking at this saying, hey, cheap oil because of this Russian invasion in Ukraine, and Russia has to offload this oil. We're in. Cheap oil being the number one explanation. That's fine.
Yeah.
Or the other explanation of this is they're preparing, right? They're preparing for something by having this massive war chest of oil. What could that be? Well, what's the most likely conflict that they are on the precipice? And that's too strong of a word, that they are toying with the idea of, is invading Taiwan, right? There is ongoing military banter back and forth between China and Taiwan. And if something were to happen, like them flying 103 warplanes over that in the last 24 hours as the U.S. visits, that just happened. If something actually were to
Really? I did
happen,
not hear that.
103 warplanes were put over Taiwan in the last 24 hours, which is a record in, however many years. But anyway, if we were to see some escalation there, what are Western nations going to do to China? They're going to sanction them, restrict oil from moving into the country, and therefore they're going to need that war chest built out.
Yeah. No, I get it. I mean, yeah, it is both sides, right? You obviously have an economy that is ruled by a central figure, right? Command and control economy. Let's play the other side out. So I think it's fair to say that the Chinese economy is somewhere between shaken and in shambles. You have a consumer base that clearly has lost faith. So they're saving. And if you have an economy that's based on the consumer, or you're trying to grow GDP, it's because of the consumer. That's not what you want to see. They also have a demographic problem that is just going to explode in the next couple of decades. And I've often thought my biggest fear is President Xi will start feeling pressure, because I think he's in his third term. He was just reelected in a landslide.
He's in a forever term right now, though.
Yeah, forever term, right? Let's just call it what it is. Yeah. But again, forever terms sometimes don't last forever.
Oh, very fair.
And,
Very fair.
And if the populist rises up and continues to voice their displeasure, which today is stamped out quickly, he might pull that trigger just to divert, and for whatever reason, nothing gets everybody behind the leader than a war. That is a scary thought.
It is, and I make it clear that this is, I call this tail risk. Yes. And this is what it's called in investing. Tail risk is something that's not probable, but it's also not impossible. So it's not that I'm saying there's more than a 50-50 chance that China invades Taiwan. I'm not a political strategist, but maybe it's a 10-15% chance. I don't know what the actual odds
are. It's a low number.
That being said, if it happens, there are massive market implications that come along with that. So why are they building this oil? Again, it could just be that they're buying on the cheap and they're happy to do so. But
Yeah,
other
maybe.
people way smarter than me, Harvard, Yale, Princeton economists, professors are saying this could be indicative of their future plans to make a move into their neighboring nation that once was a part of their country and they are now looking to potentially reclaim.
Yeah, I think a lot of those folks smarter than us, they're part of the war machine, blah blah blah, all that industrial complex stuff. It's sickening. Um, you know, the forever wars that have existed through most of my lifetime, and
Yeah, fair,
just
fair.
yeah. But again, the tail risk, yeah, it's a non-zero tail risk.
Right. As
Non-zero.
as was Russia invading Ukraine. No one thought that was happening. All of a sudden, they put 100,000 troops on the border, and people are like, "Okay, now there's a 25% chance." And the
Yeah.
next week, they move in.
Yeah.
And what happens to the global inflationary environment? Now,
Well, let's
granted,
play.
some of that
Let's
was a bottle, a
yeah.
keg, powder keg, but that is what the shot that exploded it.
Well, again, I've given this zero thought.
Mhm.
Okay, China does its thing, blah blah blah, sanctions, sanctions, sanctions. How does the every American feel that?
Chips,
Okay, so
semiconductors.
all right, so semiconductors. Oh shit, because you can't build a fab in a
You can't
heartbeat.
build anything without a semiconductor. Anything that has any bit of technology in it. Nvidia has 90% of their semiconductors. That is the absolute glory child of the market right now. 90% of the production comes from Taiwan. 60% of the world's advanced, I'm sorry, 60% of all of the world's semiconductors get produced in Taiwan. 90% of the advanced AI language, etc., chips get made in Taiwan. That disrupts everything. We just saw what happened. You know why cars are so damn expensive? Because we didn't have enough chips to supply them. What took precedent over our auto industry? Things like our military that uses an ungodly amount of chips in order to power our F-15s or whatever they are. And you know what also uses a massive amount of chips? And climate people won't like to hear this. EVs. EVs use something like 10 times the amount of chips versus a regular car. So there's massive implications across the board when it comes to semiconductors. And that is that big outstanding shock effect that presses inflation higher if something were to happen.
Not only inflation, but that would have to be negative GDP growth.
Oh, for sure. For
It
sure.
would have, and yeah. Well, let's not think about that anymore because now I'm depressed. Taylor, where can people find you?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Let me reiterate one thing. I am not saying this is a likely event. I'm saying I'm an investor. When you build out a portfolio, you need something in there that's a hedge against tail risk. And this is a tail risk that is present in the market, be it a 5-10% chance, whatever it is. Just know that it's a non zero event. So I don't mean to scare. That's not the intention, but know that there's an outside shot and smarter people than me are talking about it.
And you can go to LifeGoal Investments on Instagram and TikTok and dig into this because I'm now frightened. Thanks, buddy.